Years ago, the Elytran Empire was a thriving and prosperous world, ruled by a wise and powerful queen. Her reign brought peace and wealth to the galaxy. The people of Elytra adored their queen and her two daughters, Princess Iselin and Princess Kessara. They were admired not only for their beauty and grace, but also for their wisdom and bravery. Together, they were a symbol of hope for all the races that lived under the protection of the Elytran Empire. The princesses' bond with their mother was strong, and their courage and kindness inspired all those around them. The Elytran royal family's influence spread across many planets. It was said that the queen's daughters could speak to anyone, no matter their species or background. Their peaceful presence brought a sense of unity to all who encountered them. The galaxy, once divided, had found a sense of balance thanks to the royal family's tireless efforts. But one fateful night, everything changed. Princess Iselin and Princess Kessara vanished. No one knew where they had gone or why they disappeared. The royal palace, usually bustling with life, became a dark and silent place. The people whispered in fear and disbelief. The queen was left in a state of despair, struggling to understand how her beloved daughters could simply vanish without a trace. Every corner of Elytra was searched, every hidden passage, every secret room, and every distant moon, but there was no sign of them. It was as though they had been erased from existence. The queen's grief was so great that it seemed to take away the very light from her once glowing eyes. She ordered her best warriors, scientists, and spies to search the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Every ship and every soldier was put to use in the search, but time passed and hope began to fade. There was no word, no message, and no sign of the princesses. Some even began to fear the worst, that the princesses were lost forever. The once thriving kingdom of Elytra began to show signs of strain. The absence of the princesses left a void in the hearts of the people. Without the guidance and wisdom of the royal family, disputes began to surface. Planetary systems once united began to argue, and alliances weakened. The empire's enemies, seeing this vulnerability, grew bolder and attacks from rival factions increased. The queen, her heart broken by the loss of her daughters, found herself fighting a war on two fronts, against those who sought to take what remained of her kingdom and the mysterious force that had stolen her daughters away. But through it all, the queen did not give up. She refused to believe that her daughters were gone forever. She sent out every fleet she had left in the search. She called upon the finest minds in her empire, asking them to work together to uncover any trace of her daughters' whereabouts. Even when it seemed like there was no hope, the queen held on to the belief that she would one day see her daughters again. The galaxy had all but forgotten the once glorious royal family of Elytra. The disappearance of the princesses had left only whispers in the winds of space. But the queen, though weary and heartbroken, never lost faith. She knew that if anyone could find her daughters, it would be someone from outside their empire, someone with the skills, determination, and resourcefulness to achieve what her own people could not. That is when she turned to humanity. The humans had always been seen as a young, inexperienced race compared to the ancient and powerful Elytrans. But over the past few centuries, humanity had proven itself to be resilient, clever, and determined. They had survived wars, plagues, and environmental disasters. Their technology, while not as advanced as the Elytrans, was growing at an astonishing rate. The humans had a reputation for getting things done, even against impossible odds. Captain Rylan Cross, a human operative, had recently gained fame for his daring rescue missions in some of the galaxy's most dangerous zones. He had single-handedly led teams to recover lost ships, saved entire colonies from collapsing, and brought peace to warring factions that had once thought peace impossible. His reputation had spread across the stars, and even the most hardened alien leaders had come to respect him. The Queen, in her desperation, decided to send for him. Rylan received the Queen's message just as he was finishing a mission on the edge of a distant star system. The request was simple: find the Queen's daughters and bring them back safely. The reward for success was the promise of the Queen's full support for humanity's future dealings with the Elatran Empire. But for Rylan, the mission was more than just a task. It was a challenge, a chance to prove that humanity was more than just a growing race. It was a force to be reckoned with. Rylan accepted the mission without hesitation. He knew that failure was not an option, not only for the sake of the Queen and her daughters, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. He had seen what could happen when a powerful empire lost its sense of hope, and he didn't want that to happen to the Elatrans. He gathered his team, each one hand-picked for their expertise in different areas: combat, technology, and diplomacy. They were a diverse group, but they shared one common goal: to find and return the princesses, no matter the cost. Rylan and his team set out immediately, leaving the familiar stars of human space behind and entering the unknown. They traveled to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, far beyond the well-charted space lanes that humans knew. The journey was long and danger lurked at every corner. From pirate attacks to hostile alien worlds, Ryland's team faced obstacle after obstacle. Yet they pressed on, knowing that the fate of two princesses and the future of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. They followed the faintest of clues: broken communication signals, strange energy readings, and unexplainable phenomena. Each clue led them deeper into the unknown, where few dared to venture. But despite the odds, Rylan remained determined. He knew the importance of this mission. He knew that the princesses were not just royal heirs. They were symbols of unity and peace for an entire galaxy. To lose them would be to lose everything the Elatrans had worked for. One day, while searching an ancient and forgotten world, Ryland's team uncovered something that changed everything. Deep within the planet's core, they discovered a hidden structure, something far older than the Elatran Empire itself. The structure was a massive, towering spire that seemed to hum with a strange energy. At its base, they found the remnants of an ancient civilization that had been wiped out long ago. The ruins were filled with symbols and writings that no one could understand, but Ryland's instincts told him that this was connected to the princesses' disappearance. Ryland knew that they were getting closer to the truth. But the closer they got to finding the princesses, the more dangerous the journey became. Something dark and powerful was watching them, something that didn't want them to succeed. And yet, Ryland remained hopeful. He believed in the strength of humanity, in the power of determination, and in the belief that no force in the galaxy could stop them from saving the Queen's daughters. Little did he know, the real battle was about to begin. The journey into the unknown had already taken its toll on Captain Ryland Cross and his team. Every day, they ventured further into regions of space that even the most advanced explorers dared not go. The challenges they faced were unlike anything they had ever encountered before. As the team moved through uncharted territories, they found themselves in areas where space itself seemed to bend and twist in strange ways. The stars were dimmer, the planets more hostile, and the sense of isolation grew stronger with each passing day. Yet Ryland's determination never wavered. He had spent years facing danger on distant battlefields, but this mission was different. It was personal. He had promised the Elatran Queen that he would bring her daughters home. He couldn't afford to fail. The first real break in the search came when they arrived at a small, forgotten planet located on the edge of the galaxy. The planet was barely a blip on any star chart, but something about it felt significant. The planet was covered in thick forests, with deep ravines that cut through the landscape. The air was dense, and a strange hum could be felt in the ground. The planet seemed to pulse with an energy that felt ancient, like it had been waiting for them. Ryland's team landed on the planet's surface, scanning for any signs of life. There were no signs of civilization, no ruins, and no readable signals. Just the hum of the planet's mysterious energy. However, as they trekked through the dense forest, they stumbled upon something unexpected. Hidden beneath a thick layer of vines and moss, they found a stone structure. It wasn't large, but it had an odd shape, angular and sharp, unlike anything Rylan had seen before. The structure was ancient, its surface worn smooth from centuries of wind and rain, but still, it gave off a faint glow. They approached cautiously, knowing that this could be a clue to where the princesses had disappeared. Rylan ordered his team to carefully investigate the structure. As they dug deeper into the surroundings, they discovered strange markings on the stone walls. These symbols were unlike anything the humans had encountered, but one thing was clear: these markings had been made with purpose. One of Ryland's specialists, a linguist named Zara, managed to identify some of the symbols. They seemed to reference ancient beings, long gone from the galaxy. According to Zara's research, the beings had been known for their ability to manipulate time and space. The markings described a place where dimensions could be crossed, a realm outside of their known universe. Ryland's heart skipped a beat as he realized they were onto something much bigger than just finding the princesses. They had uncovered a secret that had been buried for centuries. Before they could investigate further, a rumble shook the ground beneath them. The air grew thick, and the strange hum they had felt earlier grew louder. They turned in every direction, weapons drawn, but there was no sign of danger. Suddenly, the forest around them seemed to come alive. Trees groaned and shifted, their branches twisting unnaturally. Shadows moved in the distance, but they couldn't see what was causing them. Ryland's instincts kicked in. "Get back to the ship," he shouted. His team moved quickly, but the ground continued to tremble beneath them. As they made their way back to the ship, they heard something that froze them in their tracks. A low, guttural growl echoed through the forest, followed by the sound of something large moving in the trees. Ryland motioned for everyone to keep quiet. They couldn't afford to be detected. They had barely made it to the ship when they saw the creatures, large, shadowy figures with glowing eyes. These beings, though not fully visible, had a presence that was unmistakable. Rylan had faced many foes in his career, but nothing like this. These creatures were unlike anything they had encountered. They seemed to be made of the very shadows themselves, able to move with incredible speed and agility. For a moment, the creatures simply watched them from the trees. Ryland's heart pounded in his chest. The team had no choice but to fight their way out. They fired their weapons at the shadows, but it was as though the bullets passed right through them, doing no damage. It quickly became clear that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than just a few hostile creatures. "We need to leave now," Rylan ordered. They didn't need to be told twice. The team rushed to board the ship, but the creatures were fast. They darted from tree to tree, closing in on the team with terrifying speed. Just as Rylan was about to climb into the ship, he felt something cold and heavy grip his ankle. He looked down to see one of the creatures pulling him backward. Without thinking, he swung his weapon, striking the shadow creature, but it only recoiled briefly before it lunged again. With all the strength he could muster, Rylan kicked free, and his team managed to get him inside the ship just as the creatures swarmed the area. The ship's engines roared to life, and they lifted off into the sky, leaving the planet's eerie surface behind them. But Rylan couldn't shake the feeling that they had just uncovered something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The creatures didn't give up easily. As the ship sped through the stars, Rylan ordered the crew to double-check the ship's systems, making sure they hadn't been followed. He stood by the window, staring into the void of space, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What were those creatures? And why had they been protecting this mysterious planet? More importantly, what did it have to do with the princesses? As they flew through the galaxy, Zara and the rest of the team began to analyze the data they had gathered. The markings on the structure, the strange energy on the planet, and the shadow creatures were all linked to an ancient civilization that had once held immense power. But what was most alarming was the connection to a realm that could bend time and space. Could this be where the princesses had been taken? Could they have crossed into this realm unknowingly? Ryland's mind raced with questions. They were no longer just looking for two lost princesses. They were hunting for something far more dangerous. The princesses may have been taken to a realm where space and time were no longer fixed. They could be anywhere at any moment, trapped in a place where nothing was as it seemed. They didn't have answers, but they did have a lead. The markings on the structure weren't just random. They were a map, a guide to finding the portal to the other realm. The team knew their next step was clear. They would have to follow the map and enter this strange dimension, no matter the cost. But as Ryland stared out into the stars, he felt an uneasy sense of foreboding. The princesses were out there, yes, but so was the force that had taken them. And it wasn't just a force of nature. It was something ancient, something powerful, and something that had the potential to destroy everything the galaxy had worked so hard to build. Ryland turned to his team. "Prepare for the next step," he said, his voice steady but with a hint of uncertainty. "We're not just going after the princesses anymore. We're going to face something far worse. Stay sharp, and no matter what happens, we don't leave without them." As the crew got to work, Ryland's thoughts turned to the Queen. He had promised her that he would bring her daughters back, but he had never imagined that the true enemy would be so powerful. The journey ahead would be the most dangerous of his life. But he couldn't turn back now, not when so much was at stake. The adventure was far from over, and Ryland knew that the hardest part was still to come, but he was ready. He had no choice but to be. The journey into the unknown had tested Captain Ryland Cross and his team in ways they had never expected. They had already encountered dangers far beyond their comprehension, and yet the hardest part was still ahead. As the crew prepared to follow the ancient map they had uncovered, Ryland couldn't shake the sense of unease that weighed on him. Every step brought them closer to the heart of a mystery that had been hidden for centuries. But at the same time, every step took them deeper into a realm where the rules of space and time no longer applied. The ship's engines hummed quietly as it cut through the vast emptiness of space. Ryland stood at the front of the ship, staring out into the starry void. His thoughts were a whirlwind of questions. Where were the princesses now? Were they trapped in this other realm, or had they somehow escaped? And what was the true nature of the force that had taken them? It wasn't just an enemy. It was something ancient, something that had the power to bend reality itself. Zara, the linguist, was hard at work studying the map they had found on the strange planet. The symbols etched into the stone were still fresh in her mind, and she was determined to uncover the secrets they held. According to her analysis, the map led to a location deep within the heart of the galaxy, a place that had been long forgotten, even by the oldest civilizations. The path they needed to take was not a straight line, but a series of points that seemed to move between the fabric of space and time. It was as though the map itself was guiding them through a maze that was constantly shifting. "Captain," Zara called out, her voice tinged with excitement, "I think I've found it. The coordinates on this map, they don't just lead us to a place in space. They lead us to a place beyond it. This is where the princesses are, but we need to act quickly." "The path is closing." Ryland turned from the window, his gaze narrowing. "What do you mean, closing?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "The map," Zara explained, "it's not static, it's like a doorway. The coordinates are changing, and if we don't follow them exactly, we may miss our chance to reach the princesses." Ryland's heart raced. He knew the stakes were high, but now they were up against something even more dangerous, time itself. He couldn't let the map slip away from them, not when they were so close. "Set the course," Ryland ordered. "We're going in, full speed ahead." The ship adjusted its course, and the crew prepared for what was about to come. As the stars around them began to blur, they felt the ship lurch, as though they were being pulled in two directions at once. Rylan gripped the armrest of his chair, his mind focused entirely on the mission ahead. He had no idea what they were about to face, but there was no turning back. The ship's systems began to flicker, and for a moment, Rylan felt as though they were being pulled into a different dimension entirely. The stars disappeared, replaced by an eerie blackness. It wasn't like the darkness of space. This was different, alive, somehow, with a strange energy that seemed to hum in the air. The walls of the ship trembled, and Rylan could feel the very fabric of reality itself beginning to warp around them. "Captain," one of the crew members shouted from the back. "We're losing power. The energy readings are off the charts." Rylan's heart sank. They were entering unknown territory, and it seemed that the ship's systems were struggling to keep up. But there was no time to worry about that now. They had a mission to complete. "Keep it together, people," Rylan shouted. "We're almost there. Stay focused." As the ship plunged deeper into the shifting blackness, Rylan could feel the very laws of space and time bending around them. The stars outside the ship twisted, turning into swirling masses of light. The ship's instruments went haywire, flashing warning signals that Rylan couldn't make sense of. But through it all, Zara remained calm, her eyes fixed on the map that was now glowing faintly on the screen in front of her. "We're almost there," Zara said, her voice steady. "The coordinates are aligning." Then, in an instant, everything changed. The ship broke through the darkness, emerging into a vast and open space that defied all logic. It was a realm unlike any Rylan had ever seen. The stars were not distant points of light, but massive, swirling spheres of energy. The very fabric of reality seemed to be alive here, shifting and changing in ways that Rylan couldn't understand. It was a place where time had no meaning, where the laws of physics seemed to be rewritten. And in the center of this strange realm, Rylan saw it, a massive structure, floating in the midst of the swirling energy. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The structure seemed to be made of solid light, its shape constantly shifting as if it were alive. It pulsed with an energy that was both beautiful and terrifying, and Rylan knew that this was the place. This was where the princesses were being held. "Take us in," Rylan ordered. He knew they had no time to waste. As the ship approached the structure, the energy around them intensified. The ship's systems began to flicker once more, struggling to keep up with the strange forces at play. Rylan could feel the tension in the air as they drew closer to the floating structure. This was it. They had found the princesses. But as they neared the structure, Rylan noticed something strange. The energy around them seemed to grow darker, more hostile. It was as though the structure itself was reacting to their presence. The air grew thick, and the walls of the ship began to shake violently. Rylan could hear the crew shouting in panic as the ship's systems began to fail one by one. "Hold on," Rylan shouted. He gripped the controls, doing his best to steady the ship as it fought against the powerful forces pulling them in. Suddenly, the ship lurched forward with a violent jolt. Rylan's heart raced as the ship plunged toward the structure. They were about to enter the heart of the unknown, and he had no idea what they would find inside. With one final push, the ship broke through the outer barrier of the structure, entering its dark, hollow interior. Rylan quickly assessed the situation. They were in. But they had no idea what lay ahead. The inside of the structure was cold, its walls covered in strange symbols and writings that seemed to pulse with energy. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the very ground beneath their feet felt unstable, as though the floor itself was alive. Rylan led his team forward, each step cautious and deliberate. They were so close now. The princesses were here, somewhere, trapped in this strange, shifting realm. As they moved deeper into the structure, Rylan began to sense that they were not alone. He could feel the presence of something watching them, something that was not human, something ancient and powerful. The walls seemed to close in on them, and Rylan felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the darkness, soft but clear. "You should not have come." Rylan froze. He recognized the voice immediately. It was not the voice of the princesses, but the voice of the force that had taken them. "We came for the princesses," Rylan said, his voice steady despite the growing fear in his chest. "Release them." Now the voice laughed, low and mocking. "You think you can take them from me? They are mine now. You are too late." Ryland's heart pounded as he realized the truth. They hadn't just come to rescue the princesses. They had come to face something far greater than they could have imagined. The true battle was just beginning. And this time, it wasn't just about saving the princesses. It was about saving the galaxy itself.